Welcome to Lost in Thoughts, a space for stories, reflections, and life's absurdities. Who am I? Well, I'm someone like you, navigating this wild world, often getting a little lost along the way. But maybe, just maybe, getting lost is how we find what matters most. So sit back, relax, and let's explore this beautiful mess together. The scene starts at a small town in the Midwest. There's a family of three: husband, a wife, and a son who's probably 12 years old, 13 years old, somewhere around there. Son's well behaved, the father is respected, and the wife is beautiful and kind. They're having a birthday party, celebrating the father at the time. It's not just him, it's also his neighbors. I think there's probably 3 neighbors total, husbands and wives, everyone there. So it's probably, I want to say 2, 4, 6, 8 people plus the birthday boy makes it 9 people. So it's a small gathering, but enough to have a good time. They're having dinner and talking jokes, and the other aspect of it is that most of the people there are Caucasian or white. I think one of the neighbors is, I believe, Middle Eastern, and I believe that's it, give or take. But one person is an immigrant, like first generation immigrant, just moved there. But everyone's fine, everyone's cool, everyone's having a great time. But what happens? They're sitting and laughing, and they're talking about the birthday guy's finishing his shelter, because I think he spent the whole summer building this shelter, and they're mocking him, but kind of tongue-in-cheek, kind of teasing him. Oh, you finally finished that shelter, right? It's like, yeah. It took me some time, but I'm glad we finally got it there. Stuff like that. Just kind of ribbing each other. Anyways, a few moments pass later, and then, granted that this is like during the 50s and 60s, this is like Cold War era, or I don't know exactly what the 60s era would be, but it's a time where you had bomb alarms, like air bomb type deal, and airplanes started flying over their land, and then the alarm went off, like the siren went off, and everybody knew that there's a high possibility that we're going to war, or wars on American soil. And so everyone is running and scattering back to their house and trying to figure out what to do. So this guy, having his shelter built out, has already foreseen the possibility of this happening. And so he tells his son, hey, they're going to cut off water. We don't know when, but let's fill up as much bottles as we possibly can before they cut the water. And so his son's getting all as much bottles as possible. He's telling his wife, I need you to do this, this, and this. She's like, I'm on it, and she's already moving. He's doing what he needs to do, gathering any more assets, and guess what? They're gonna go to their shelter because it's just finished built. They head down, and in the meantime, while in preparation, one of their neighbors comes back and says, hey, we need to stay at your shelter. And he's like, what do you mean? It's like, where's your shelter? It's like, well, we just have a basement. Well, all we have is like a little screen door. That's not going to stop any nuclear bombs or anything like that. And so he's like, well, I can't help you because the shelter is only made for 3 people. I didn't make it big enough for everyone. And so the neighbor got flustered and starts getting a little belligerent with them and starts chipping at him. And eventually he leaves, and so he goes away. And the guy's like hey, so the guy's like, hey, let's hustle, let's get this stuff done. And sure enough, they cut the water, right? The water gets cut off. So I think the son had maybe filled up 4 or 5 bottles of water, and they took them all downstairs. So as they're getting downstairs, they get down there, and he closes the door. And as he closes the door, he locks it, and the neighbors all start coming back to the house, to his house, because none of them had prepared their bomb shelters, and he was the only one that did. But his bomb shelter is only enough to accommodate him, his wife, and his son. And without anyone else's contributions or anything like that, they all started getting angry, and they were yelling at him to open the door. And he's like, I can't. He's like, I just can't. They got more pissed off at him, and they're like, well, if you don't open this door, we're gonna knock it down. We're gonna break open the door. And he's like, I can't. You guys gotta find a shelter somewhere else. Go to this house or go to that house. I mean, I can't just open this door for you guys. There's not enough space for all of you. And so it gets more and more aggressive, to the point where they knock down a light post of some sorts and running it through his house, knocking over his table that they just was celebrating his birthday on, to the point where they start battle ramming the door. And they're basically saying, yo, we're gonna kill you. But at the same time, they're kind of yelling at each other and telling so-and-so, why don't you take your family back to where they came from? It's like, oh, you people are all the same. And all of the negative stereotype and racism just came out, just got pulled out of them. And they were really like going after each other back and forth. And then they eventually banded together and went after the guy with the shelter and his family. And they started battle ramming that door and just hitting it. And eventually the door started to give. And it started to open up. And they were reaching in there, clawing at him, trying to pull him out. And they were literally going to kill this man. All of it till the bomb alarm goes off again. And this alarm starts winding. And then they just say it over the radio. It's a false alarm. Sorry for the inconvenience, blah, blah, blah. And that's just as soon as they open the door. This is like happened as soon as they busted open the door and they had their hands on him. Then that's what this false alarm went over the PA system, and so everyone kind of started to like calm down and kind of relax, to the point where it's like, wow. And at the very end, it's like, well, at least we didn't get hit by the bomb. And the real question is, did we? Or didn't we? And that really poses a question, because even though there wasn't a physical bomb that went off, the emotional relationship bomb blew up in their face. And you got to see the true colors of people, how they really felt about each other, under duress, under stress, under the thought of them dying, that they were willing to kill everyone. Because if that door is open and a nuclear bomb goes off, everyone in the shelter is gone too. right? You can't. Who cares how well you built it if the door is open? Everyone dies. So they were just wanting to kill him. The guy who built his own shelter, and they just spent no time, spent no money, didn't give him any money to say, hey, can you build a shelter for all of us since you're so good at it? None of that stuff. They just envied the fact that he did his own work and he wasn't willing to share because he calculated only enough for him, his wife, and his son. And I think it was going to last him a few weeks had they needed to be there. But he was prepared. And everyone else wasn't. And when that alarm went off, everyone's real intentions came through. And that was kind of a sad. But it was really thought-provoking to kind of see that acted out, which I really love. The acting of that. And I kind of felt a similarity between that and 2020 when it's jab versus non-jab people claiming that it's you're this if you don't do it, or you're that if you did do it. And I've seen relationships really be tested, and I feel that bomb kind of went off during 2020, and you throw in the election on top of that. I know people who do not speak to each other ever again, and they used to hang out on really cool social settings. They used to spend the night at each other's house type deal, and it got to the point where they were calling parents on an individual, almost to the point where they're getting involved in someone's job, thinking that person's crazy, really believing that they're legitimately crazy. And now and those relationships don't exist, that once existed don't exist anymore. And it's really interesting to kind of see how that kind of blew up in a lot of people's face and kind of brought out the worst in people. I think there's a lot of parallels between that. So, but let me know what you think. If you saw any similar parallels to that, or if you had another example that kind of illustrates that as well. I'm interested in your thoughts. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Lost in Thoughts. I am grateful to each and every one of you. Thank you, and I'll see you in the